No, I'm just in a funny mood right now.
Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Rajiv, and my pronouns are he, him.
And I'm Carly, and my pronouns are she, her. And welcome to the Queer Sober Social Podcast. We're a chill social group of LGBTQIA plus folks who want to do more with their lives than just drinking.
Whether you identify as in recovery, sober curious, or just wanted to be sober while you're listening in, we're happy that you're here. And with that, let's get started. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. It has been one hell of a year, because here we are again, back in March. But this time, I think there is actually a light at the end of the tunnel, because we are finally seeing numbers drop down. We're seeing people get vaccinated, like Carly over here. We're not yet seeing people vaccinated, like me over here. So we still got room to go, but we're almost there.
We're giving you the best of both worlds, as always. I seriously cannot believe it's March again. It still feels like it's just been a continuation of March, and that this is technically just March 396 of 2020.
Well, considering that
So much has happened.
so much has happened, and considering this is now March 300 and whatever number you used, uh, how are you? Because normal people don't go through March 300 like 30 times in a row.
Yes, seriously, I don't remember signing my contract for Groundhog's Day 2, but clearly we're starring in it and have been for the last year. I I how do you even answer that question? How do each other even answer that right now? Because it's so loaded. It's so big of a question to ask how you are doing 1 year into a national global pandemic health crisis. I feel like I've just been oscillating between complete and utter hopelessness and carefreeness, but at the same time, we're okay. Somehow life goes on and we made it here and we're still standing and so much has happened and so little has happened at the same time. It just feels like it's been a year of extremes. Is that how you feel?
Year of extremes. I don't know. I've certainly felt some of the actually, yeah, that's probably fair. Some levels of extremes, maybe not like positive negative, but like some other dimensions that don't exist.
That's amazing. I do just want to say, like, we're gonna get into it today and, kind of do a yearly recap question mark on the pandemic, but I do just want to throw it out there that clearly humans are resilient AF, and most of us have made it through this in one piece. So we're here for you. We're out here. We're part of it. It's crazy to try and wrap your mind around something that's been ongoing for a year, that's still ongoing, by the way, in case anyone needs to hear that message. It's wild. It's been wild. It's still wild. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster with no seatbelt on and have been for quite some time.
Roller coasters without seatbelts seems both exhilarating and scary.
Well, let's start back at the beginning, Rajiv.
Okay.
Where were you? What was life like for you in March of 2020 or early 2020? What was going on in your life?
Early 2020. Where was
Those
I?
were the
I feel
days.
like I know.
Simpler times.
In the simpler times, in the before times, in like the era before this one.
Yeah.
I remember I was traveling a lot in January, February, and March. In January, I actually went to like New York City, and like I remember going to Chinatown, and my parents and everybody were saying like, "Hey, you shouldn't go there just in case," because like that was the first that we actually heard of this coming into the U.S. And I remember going to like a restaurant over there and eating, and then not only people were like starting to be concerned about this thing that people were calling coronavirus. Kobe also had literally just died at that time. So it was just kind of like a mix of a number of different bad things. And boy, was that, the nicest bad thing that could ever happen this year, like the beginning of the year. Like nobody knew just how much it was going to change everything. Um, I remember then going to Dallas like 2 months later, meaning in March of 2020, because we were all thinking that it was like not even here. Like not there was no big deal for us to have to deal with something like this. And I was in Dallas with like literally hundreds of other people all over the US who had all flown into Dallas just to be in one building, and we didn't usually leave. So like I have no idea if any of that caused anything. Not that I know of. Otherwise, they definitely would have contacted us. And at the time, we were just like sitting down, chatting about Tiger King or like Love Is Blind or like something like that. I remember sitting down over there, and that was my March 2020, which is crazy to think because flying back and forth between Chicago and somewhere else, and then shifting to all of a sudden just being stuck in my own home for forever, basically. It's kind of hard to like wrap my head around. But what about you, Carly? Like, where were you?
Oh my goodness. It's so wild to hear that like you were around other people talking about the shows of early quarantine, like traveling about. That is so wild. And who knew that Kobe's death was going to be this like terrible omen for, I mean, obviously it was terrible and I was heartbroken over that. And you're just like, wow, it's only January of this year and like such a huge loss for our country like has occurred, and it was hard for me to wrap my brain around that. Just like you just one day somebody's here and the next day like there's a tragedy, and
Mm.
then that before even the tragedy of all tragedies happened. So it was wild. Yeah, and I can't even believe that was just a year ago. It feels so much further away
Yeah.
and also like really close at the same time. It's so bizarre. This whole timeline of what's occurred in the past year, what are days, what are months, what are weeks.
I mean, there's a reason we're calling this "We're Sick of COVID" because like it's so much. Like 12 months of this, I don't know that we've really gotten it fully right because I don't think anybody's really built to handle quarantine like this. This is also like the
Yes.
first global pandemic in the modern era, right? Like proper global pandemic. There's been like isolated instances, but this is crazy, man. Nobody has anything to
It's,
like build off of for living life in the 21st century.
it's so true. I was just talking to my dad about how my great grandma, who lived to be 101, was technically alive during the previous pandemic. And she was just a little girl, but like nobody talked about those times with us. And I just feel like it was so missed in our history textbooks, and just nobody had ever like really mentioned the pandemic until we were going through this one, and we were like, "Oh, dust off those old records that we have from 100 years ago. Let's see how to not to mess this up." And then completely missed the mark somehow.
Well, which is crazy because like if you looked at some of those things that were written at that time, like they were telling people like you should be wearing a mask, you should be
Yeah.
like washing your hands and stuff like that or whatever. And that's crazy to me to think that we haven't really learned all that much.
Anything in 100 years.
Hey, we have somebody from the UK joining us. Hello, DJ Yannick.
Hey.
Welcome.
Yes, please feel free to share in our conversation about COVID and how we're sick of it, but we don't really have a choice but to carry on. But yes, we will. I'll recap where I was at. A year ago, I was working at my unpaid internship and
Oh no.
at my undisclosed location. But um, it was really intense to basically do the work of what other counselors were doing and getting no money for it. And it really weighs on your mental health. But I didn't realize how much it weighed on me until COVID happened. And all of a sudden, it just abruptly ended and we didn't have to go in anymore. And it kind of felt like very bittersweet, because there was, like, so much of like, nobody had any time to prepare. People had left, like, their work shoes and clothes, like, at the office, and I know I had, like, a whole desk drawer of paperwork and ideas and, like, documents on the computer that were just, like, literally might as well just evaporated into time and space.
My
So, yeah.
my sister had plants in her office, so you can imagine what happened to those.
Keyword is had.
Right.
I know there's like so many things online, which we will definitely get to, about being like just how gross like work fridges are gonna be and people's like coffee mugs on their desk, like from a year ago. It's just, yeah, like our offices has probably become like a toxic wasteland if nobody has gone in them in a year and like monitored like what's going on in people's snack drawer. Anyway, that's I can see you going off to another dimension of thought with that. Sorry to be gross. But it was kind of wild for just something that you've been doing and like had planned to be doing for the rest of, for a good part of 2020 to just completely come to a halt. And my friend and I, when we would be carpooling to our internship site, would like kind of wait a moment after we would park the car and kind of just like do a small prayer that we wouldn't have to like that we would just make it through or that we wouldn't have to do this for that much longer. Like we're almost done with our schooling and then all of a sudden we did get our wish somehow. So we were like, "Oh my gosh, did our prayers cause COVID to happen?" Because technically we did get an early out of our of our internship that we so desperately wanted. But to be at home and I have this moment of just remembering so vividly of sitting in my desk chair and like really the weight of, oh, like we're gonna be home for a while and just like not knowing what that meant or looked like, but just trying to wrap my head around the fact of like, okay, it's gonna be more than 2 weeks. It's gonna be more than 2 months, maybe. Like I just have to start preparing. And it was this, like, heavy weight of, like, we've never gone through anything like this before. What are we gonna do? And what did we do? We went panic buying.
Oh man, early pandemic, man. I even forgot about that.
Yes. I will say I'm definitely guilty. I would, like, wake up in the morning just, like, in a panic, like, of, like, "Is there gonna be enough food? How am I gonna go to the store?" And, like, making, like, fake masks, like, out of bandanas and, like, going to the store and it felt like Halloween where, like, everybody was just wearing whatever, like, bathrobes and gas masks and just, like, whatever you could, like, find from your home that would, like, cover your face and body. It's so wild.
Well, I
Yeah.
remember that like at the time they were also not really saying masks were required really
Yeah.
early because like we didn't know enough.
Yeah.
So that's even crazier for me to think about, especially now that we know things now.
Right. Right, and I was, like, embarrassed. I was like, "I don't wanna, like, be the only one wearing a mask at a store, like,
Right.
if am I panicking too much? Like, what does this even mean?" So, yeah, I remember those were the early days, so wild. And, yeah, like you, I had taken some trips earlier in the year. I took a trip in January and February, and I remember in the February trip, like, coronavirus was in the news, and I'd heard about it, but I it didn't even cross my mind while we were traveling, like, should is this something we should be worried about? Should I
Yep.
be nervous on a plane? Like, none of that existed yet, really, and it's so wild how, like, it could just all turn on a dime, and then a month later, traveling is shut down, basically, when
It's
we were both just in places so recently before that.
absolutely like such a drastic change. And I'm actually surprised just how well, like at least for my own sake, how lucky I was to try to get like have everything just naturally flow into completely lockdown in one place, but like truly night and day. And truly, nobody was thinking anything of this, or they were thinking about it for just like a couple weeks or a couple months max, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know that we both live alone, so having to quarantine or be, in a space by ourselves wasn't that big of a challenge, but others we know definitely, went through some challenges and you either got really close with who you were living with or it tore you apart. Especially can't even imagine with children and worrying about school on Zoom, like just I can't even imagine. With how many breakups and weddings that there have been in COVID, I feel like that's just a sign of a sign of the times.
yeah. I feel both like saddened by the number of relationships that I've seen just kind of fall apart. Um, hey, thanks for following. And then also the number of weddings that had to get canceled because I was like waiting and looking forward to some of that stuff, and then all of a sudden, they were like canceled. It's the same thing with like all the concerts and stuff like that, right? Because I was like so ready to go to some concerts or some like events and things like that, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden everything shut down, and then people were like, no, this is not going to be 2 months. No, this is not going to be 6 months. And then they were like, well, we're not going to give you back your money, but we're we're just going to like push this out a year. And honestly, I don't see it happening even this year. So let's see.
Exactly, exactly. They weren't just like, "Oh, okay, we'll just go down with and be okay with this." They were like, "No, we're gonna try and push it." And then it's like, "Oh, okay, we still technically can't do it." So it's like kept like being pushed and pushed. So, so wild. Wow. Okay, let's recap some things that we did do in 2020. It's so crazy to think that in a year where we couldn't go anywhere, we could still do so much kind of, or so much could still happen.
And yet so little.
Yes.
Because I mean, okay, before we dive into that, I want to just say like 2020 definitely not a great year for everybody. And 2020 not the worst year for either of us, honestly. I can definitely say that like neither of us fell sick that we know of, as asymptomatic stuff happens. Um, Nobody that I knew was like seriously affected, which has also been quite nice for just even like my extended bubble. Uh, but like still, I mean, everybody still had to spend a year, and we had to still do things. And so knowing all of that, like that's kind of why it probably felt like nothing and everything at the same time, because like that's what we did. Like we did nothing because we didn't go anywhere, we didn't do anything, and at the same time we did everything because we were just trying to refigure out everything, like every single piece of our lives. But at the same time, for us at least, uh, for those that might be listening, it's probably not going to be like all doom and gloom on our side, which we're very, very thankful for and very, very fortunate to have. But know fully well that that isn't the case for everybody.
Absolutely. What a wild year. And I mean, if anything, you can say you survived.
True.
Like, that's the biggest thing. You did what you could. You were a hero if you stayed home and avoided everyone and wore a mask and were socially distant. Like, that's all you could do, you know? And when this crazy giant thing in the world is happening and it felt like you had no control, you could just do these small little actions every day. And if you were able to, you know, in your free time that you had during the quarantine, really like sit down and take a cold, hard look at your life. And you were kind of forced to, like, you were forced to reassess things and go through your life and be like, what is working? What's not working about what I was doing before the world just got to take a collective, like, deep breath and pause. And it didn't feel like you were behind in life because everybody was just somehow all of a sudden on the same playing field with you. And we were all forced to rest and take a moment and take many moments and many days to, you know, be part of this wild, crazy adventure. So it's so crazy to think about. And the show just somehow continued to go on. Life, we're all here, we're still living, trying to do our best, whether it be in quarantine or not, but work still moved from home. Things just like all of a sudden became all online. And thank goodness for the internet, because what did the people in 1918 do? We do not know. But yeah, wow.
Truly. When you, I mean, like that's a crazy list to just like hear, like because you're right, all of that happened, but it feels like none of that happened because it just feels such like a part of our normal lives now. All of a sudden, like I've been online now for work since. Well, actually, I was online for work since October last year, 2019, but different story. That was not because of COVID. Uh, but that kind of still was like it's just been a continuation of my normal life more or less. Um, and I truly don't know what they did in the 1900s
Right.
because that feels like I mean I feel like there were probably more live instruments and live bands. I feel like everybody had balconies at that time, and therefore we're just like sitting out there, you know, in hoop skirts or whatever people wore at the time. I don't know.
Yes. That's amazing.
Drinking a cup of tea, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if anything too, I feel like this year I definitely deepened my sober identity. I deepened my queer identity with myself, and I really am coming out of this just more solidified of who I am and who I want to be. And that's just been a really interesting dynamic of this whole thing.
It makes a lot of sense. Um, well, what are some of the more like daily things that you actually did? Because macro-wise, like it's like, all right, cool, we're more online, we're figuring out how to live alone, like all of that stuff. I feel like everybody got into some things, and I want to know which of the things that everybody got into did you get into?
Yeah, the quarantine projects for
Right.
sure. I completed a puzzle, a 2000 piecer.
Matched.
That was so long ago. That was May, maybe I finished it. I remember working on it while I was like taking class online and just like did not care if they saw me working on this puzzle actively in the background of class. I yeah, I left a toxic relationship, and I left a toxic relationship with my internship and just realized how good for my mental health that was. And I was able to find a job working from home. And so I worked from home for a long, long time. And I was really grateful for that job because it provided me structure. Because during early quarantine, I was being like everyone else and staying up till 4 a.m. and sleeping till 12 and just being like, oh, I only need to eat 2 meals a day because I slept through one. Like just being a goblin. So this job gave me a lot of structure and really helped my sleep schedule get back on track, which also helped my mental health. And I finished school. I graduated with my master's. I literally had a virtual graduation where I was just in my apartment by myself, eating cake.
Oh, no.
Didn't quite live up to the walking across the stage at the Chicago Theater as was planned, but it was okay. It's still, like we just rolled with it. It still happened. I still completed the work. I did everything I was supposed to do. I took my exams and I became a counselor to help people get sober, and it was so amazing. What else did I do? I probably like the most fun event that I had of last year was I threw myself a birthday party, and I tried to make it as fun as possible because I just put all my time and energy into planning it because I was like, I need something to distract me from thinking about the state of the world. So I had this very fancy balloon display. I bought these colorful wigs that everybody got to put on and play around with. So we have all these ridiculous wig and balloon photos, and I got this like crazy cake. So planning that really helped, help me focus on everything that was not my birthday. So,
What month was
you
that
know,
in?
that was August.
August.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I definitely have some it was questionably COVID safe. Uh,
What does that
for
mean?
sure.
Like,
There was I mean, were we wearing masks indoors? No.
hmm,
Were we wearing masks outdoors? Some people were.
okay.
They were outdoors. But yeah, I mean, you just are like, we need to do something. Like I needed something to look forward to. So I planned this and people came and it was great to see everyone, but it was also weird because now you have these like COVID boundaries with people that you've known your whole life. And
Hmm.
uh it's just everyone's so scared to be near each other. And I feel like my brain has reprogrammed itself to like be alert and be aware of people that now it hasn't sunk in at all that I have gotten both shots of the vaccine because I'm still, and I mean, I know we're supposed to be, but my brain is just like, no, we must keep doing all these crazy quarantine activities that we've been doing of like my self beauty routine of like cutting my own hair questionably. And like, yes, that happened in
I
quarantine.
have not done that since like May or June. Thankfully, thankfully, places opened up enough in Illinois at least.
The thing I'm proudest of, I think that I've learned through quarantine is how to do my own nails and how much money I've saved from not going to the salon. And I will continue to do my own nails from home. I've saved so much money, and that's been my one like quarantine thing that I think is gonna stick.
You know, personal finance tips coming from the Queer Sober Social podcast.
Do your own nails. Yes. Okay. Tell that. I feel like I just said so many things that I did. I want to know what you've done. What did you accomplish in the whole year of the pandemic?
I think before the pandemic actually started, I had bought a uh, like an actual book for baking bread, and so I started doing that. And then quarantine hit, and then everybody started doing sourdough, and I felt like, all of a sudden I'm just gonna look like one of those posers who just started making sourdough as a result of quarantine when I had bought a book before March.
Where's the receipts? Show us the receipts.
I'll bring the receipts. I'll put them in the show notes if I have to.
Rajiv is not a poser, everyone. For the record, let the record show.
I decided to sell my house, which I'm still in, so you know how well that went. Only took a year. And oh right, yeah. We created this QSS podcast. That was something that we started during quarantine. And
It is.
this has been entirely online. This podcast has never known the real world. All it knows is just being able to talk to each other virtually.
That's true. Until dun dun dun, hopefully the near future.
Well, yeah, exactly. Crossing fingers. I also, oh right, yeah, because right after that, because we started broadcasting in October, I think. We voted, or at least I voted. I think you voted, right?
I voted, yes.
Yes, good. Okay. I hope everybody listening who's in the US, who's of eligible age, also voted. But you know, like that felt like is what I did. Did you ever get tested for COVID? Because I had to get tested twice for like some medical procedures that was going on, which by the way is also very weird to do in a pandemic. But yeah, that's kind of what was up.
Yeah, I very, very lucky and fortunate that I hunkered down. I did what the guidelines said to do. Well, ignoring my birthday party. I did not have to get tested because I was not knowingly exposed to COVID, thankfully. I've heard that testing sucks and I hate when people talk about how horrible it is and I'm just like
There's two versions. Just don't get
yes.
the one that says nasal pharyngeal because that goes like to your brain. It feels like it. The other one that I had went up to like here-ish, or it felt like there,
Okay.
and that felt like it was annoying but tolerable. The
Yeah.
other one was just like straight up, ouch.
Oof.
Yeah,
I feel like it'd be so hard not to have a reflex and like, you know, pull their arm out of your face.
seriously. Well, I think we might want to start wrapping up this episode a little bit, just because it is a bit of a like recap of what we've been doing for 2020. But I do want to make sure that we're like getting to this one really, really important point. Like, if you got sober or you came out in 2020, like seriously,
You win.
like
You win
just
2020.
exactly, you just win 2020. Congratulations, you did it. You were probably forced to sit there with yourself, like staring at yourself on a Zoom call for like 6 hours straight, and then you realized, oh no, I need to do this. And congrats to those who are able to do it, because doing either of those things during a normal year, quote unquote normal year, is hard enough. And then I'm sure it's only just getting easier for you guys. But know that we are definitely rooting for people like that. Whoever out there has done that, like congrats to you guys.
Yes, if you reevaluated your relationship with alcohol or substances or figured out your sexuality or your gender identity or expression, holy moly, was 2020 the year to start questioning and figuring that out about yourself because wow, we commend you.
Totally.
That's amazing.
Well, I think I want to wrap this episode up on a high note like that, because congratulations, winners of 2020. You could hear
all
it.
survived.
Right. You heard a little bit about the slightly more frivolous stuff that we were up to comparatively. But, you know, as it goes, different people have to do different things during different years. So we really, really thank you guys for joining us. Make sure to subscribe if you would like to, so you don't miss the next one as it comes out, because we try to launch an episode every other week. You can find the video podcast on twitch.tv and YouTube. And don't forget, the video podcast has exclusive content, usually. This time there won't be, but normally there is.
You can find our podcast on all major platforms. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Chicago Queer Sober Social and contact us at queersobersocial@gmail.com or leave us a voice message on our Anchor page with any questions or stories that you'd like to share with us. Join our Queer Sober Social now every other Saturday, just before the live podcast. And thank you so, so much for being here and listening to the Queer Sober Social podcast. And always remember,
You are queer enough.
you are sober enough.
You are enough. Well, thank you guys all so much. I'm really sorry that we have to drop early this time. But if you could share this link if you're watching this with all your friends, or take a listen to the podcast after it comes out, we'd really appreciate it. But other than that, unfortunately, we do have to end the stream here, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks.
See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Here.